You open the fridge not because you're hungry, but because you're anxious. You check the shelves like you check your bank account, hoping something new appeared while you weren't looking. But it's the same. Half a bottle of milk, condiments, and that leftover sense of dread that money might run out before courage does. Jasmine didn't expect much from this morning. She knew what day it was, the 28th, 2 days before rent was due, 4 days after her account dipped below zero. She stood in her tiny kitchen, knees aching from a double shift heart, heavier than the grocery bag she knew she wouldn't be able to fill tonight. The blinds were still closed, not out of laziness, but to keep the mailman's shadow from reaching her doorstep. She hadn't opened a single bill in 5 days. Not because she forgot, but because she remembered too much, too clearly, too painfully. Every envelope was another reminder that survival was now a guessing game. She muttered it to herself without thinking. "I'm trying. Why is it still not enough?" Her voice cracked, but only slightly, because even tears cost energy she didn't have to spare. She didn't want much, not luxury, not status, just a break, just a moment to breathe without calculating what she had left after the bills took everything else. And underneath that, exhaustion was a quieter, darker question she hadn't spoken out loud in years. God, do you even see this? If you've ever looked at a receipt and felt your chest tighten, if you've ever rationed hope like groceries, then what's coming next might be what your soul's been aching for. But my God shall supply all your need according to his riches in glory by Christ Jesus. Philippians 4:19 KJV. She didn't roll her eyes when she remembered that verse, but she did flinch, because when your fridge is empty, those words can feel too far away, too pretty, too polished for someone standing barefoot on the cold tile floor of reality. But something inside her didn't let the words go. Not because she believed them completely, but because she needed them to believe in her. And in that moment, before checking her phone again, before facing the unopened bills on the counter, something quiet happened. It wasn't money. It wasn't a miracle. It was just stillness, the kind that whispers, "You're not alone in this room." Think of your soul like a candle burned low by worry. Even when the wax is nearly gone, even when the flame flickers, one breath, one whisper, one verse can keep it alive long enough for morning. You don't need the whole fire today, just enough light to find the next step. You are not forgotten. You are not failing. You are not alone. God, I don't need riches, just relief, not the whole answer, just the courage to open one envelope without breaking. If this whisper felt like breath in the middle of your silence, you can subscribe. Not because you're ready, but because staying connected might make the next whisper come when you need it most. Because Jasmine hasn't opened the bills yet, but what she hears in the stillness between the envelopes will change how she sees what's inside. According to the American Psychological Association 2022, 83% of adults say financial stress keeps them up at night. Sometimes what breaks us isn't the number, but the silence that follows. If you've ever sat by a stack of unpaid bills and whispered, "God, please," write still, trusting in the comments. Your words might echo louder than you know. And if this whisper gave you even one breath of peace, wait for the next one. Because what Jasmine sees in the envelope she finally opens might be less about money and more about mercy. Sometimes the scariest thing in the room isn't the overdue notice, it's the silence after you read it. It took her an hour, not because she was busy, but because her hands wouldn't stop trembling. The envelope had been sitting on her counter for days like a quiet threat. Every time she walked by, it seemed to breathe louder. She didn't open it all at once. She stared at the seal, ran her thumb along the edge, hoped it might vanish if she just waited long enough. But it didn't, so she finally sat down, folded her knees to her chest, and slowly tore it open. Inside, not a demand, not a threat, just a balance, and a note typed but soft somehow. We understand this is a difficult time. If you need an extension, call us. No shame, no harsh red letters, just an invitation. She didn't cry, not really, but her shoulders dropped for the first time in a week. She had imagined yelling, collections, maybe even eviction, but what she got was understanding. And in that space between fear and reality, something happened. Not dramatic, just a small crack in the weight she'd been carrying. Because sometimes the fear is louder than the facts. And sometimes mercy looks like a form letter that doesn't scream at you. If you've ever been too afraid to open your own life, then what happens next might feel like a whisper you didn't know you needed. Therefore I say unto you, take no thought for your life, what ye shall eat or what ye shall drink, nor yet for your body. Matthew 6:25. KJV. She remembered this verse, not because she studied it, but because her grandmother whispered it every time they had nothing but rice and hope. Back then she didn't understand. Now she still doesn't, but for a different reason. Because somehow, even now, she hadn't run out of food, of air, of time. Something always came. Not always early, but always enough. If you've ever wondered why you're still standing even after everything, stay. Because the next moment might show you how mercy has always been following. Think of your fear like unopened letters. Each one feels heavier because of the stories you tell yourself about them. But when you open them, not all of them bite. Some breathe, some release you. Maybe faith is just opening one envelope when you're ready to believe you're not alone. You are still breathing. You are still covered. You are still becoming. God, I'm tired of assuming the worst. Help me open what I've been too afraid to face with eyes that still hope for gentleness. If you're still here and this felt like something only your heart could hear, subscribe. Maybe it's time to stop walking through this alone, because Jasmine hasn't called the number yet. But the voice she hears when she does won't just change her bill, it'll change her breath. Studies show that over 60% of stress-related illnesses are rooted in financial anxiety. But what if the cure isn't money, but a moment of calm? If you've ever feared what might be inside the envelope, write "still opening" in the comments. Your vulnerability might open someone else's faith. And if this whisper helped you face even one small thing today, wait for the next one, because Jasmine's next step isn't about bills, but about asking for help. And that's a kind of courage money can't buy. It wasn't the amount that scared her, it was the number she had to dial. She sat at the edge of her bed, phone in hand, number typed out, but thumb frozen over the green call button. What if they're rude? What if they say no? What if they ask why I let it get this far? She had rehearsed her apology 4 times. Even planned to cry if that helped, but after all that, when she finally called, the first thing she heard wasn't a demand. It was music, soft, light, almost familiar. Then came a voice, Female. Warm. Hi, this is Natalie. Thanks for calling. How can I support you today? Support. Not collect. Not warn. Just support. It startled Jasmine more than if the woman had yelled. She stuttered at first, then confessed more than she planned. She told Natalie she was working nights, that her last paycheck went to rent, that the fridge was nearly empty. There was silence. Not the bad kind, not judgmental, just space. Like someone on the other end was giving her time to breathe. Then came Natalie's voice again. I've been there, 3 words, and everything shifted. If you've ever thought you had to explain yourself just to deserve compassion, what's coming next might whisper something deeper than relief. Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Matthew 11:28 KJV. She didn't expect that verse to rise in her mind. Not in this moment, not while talking to a stranger, but something about Natalie's tone felt like rest. Not vacation rest, not sleep rest, but soul rest, the kind you feel when someone lets you stop pretending. Because Jasmine didn't ask for grace, but what she hears next will teach her something about provision that money never could. Maybe grace isn't a ladder where you climb up if you prove you deserve help. Maybe grace is a hand that reaches down before you even know how to ask. Like Natalie's voice not fixing Jasmine's problem, but making it feel a little less like punishment. You are still held. You are still heard. You are still worthy. God, help me stop believing that I have to break just to be seen. Help me ask, even when my voice shakes. If Natalie's voice reminded you of something holy, subscribe. Because maybe the next voice you hear won't just be human, because Jasmine hasn't seen her bank account yet. But the text she receives tomorrow morning will be about something far more valuable than dollars. Over 50% of Americans avoid asking for help financially because of shame, not lack. But what if your breakthrough is hiding in the voice you're too afraid to call? If you've ever feared being judged for struggling, write still asking in the comments. You might help someone else find their voice too. And if this whisper felt like the sound of someone still believing in you, wait for the next one. Because the balance in Jasmine's account won't define her worth, but what happens next just might remind her of it. It wasn't a miracle, just a message. But sometimes that's enough. The next morning, she didn't want to get out of bed. Not because she was tired, but because waking up meant facing numbers again. Her phone blinked silently beside her. She reached for it, not expecting anything good. Bills, notifications, overdraft alerts, it always started the same way. But today, there was a name she hadn't seen in years. It was her cousin Jared. They hadn't talked in months, maybe more. The message was short. Hey, I had a weird feeling. You okay? Need help with anything? She stared at the screen for a full minute. Not because she didn't understand, but because she did. He didn't know what was going on, but somehow, he knew. She hadn't told anyone, not even her closest friend. There's a kind of shame that clings to poverty as if needing help makes you weak or worse, unworthy. But this text felt like someone cracked the door open just enough for light to sneak in. She didn't reply right away. Not because she didn't want to, but because her fingers were trembling with something she hadn't felt in days, relief and fear of hope. If you've ever hidden your struggle so well that even love couldn't find it, what comes next might remind you that you're not as invisible as you feel. Before they call, I will answer, and while they are yet speaking, I will hear. Isaiah 65:24. KJV. She didn't remember reading that verse before, but when it echoed in her heart, it felt like the text from Jared had been sent before she even whispered her need. What if God speaks not in thunder but in notifications? If you're still watching, maybe it's because something in your life has been waiting to be seen too. Stay. What comes next might not fix the bills, but it might fix how you breathe through them. Think of pain like a closed curtain. Sometimes we don't open it because we're afraid nothing beautiful is outside. But a message, a voice, a verse, a whisper can be like the morning light that spills under the edge without asking for permission. And suddenly, you can see again. You are seen, you are sought, you are safe. God, if you're still sending whispers, I'll try to listen. Even when I doubt it's you, even when I don't reply yet. If this whisper felt like a message meant for only you, subscribe. Because sometimes the thing you need most shows up in the next breath. Because Jasmine is about to text him back. And what she types won't just shift her week, it'll reveal the one fear she's never said out loud. Most people scroll past moments like this. But if you stay, you might just see how silence turns into shelter. If you've ever received a message right before you broke, write still receiving in the comments. You never know who's watching and waiting to be reminded. And if this whisper felt like someone breaking the silence with you, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's reply might unlock something even deeper than relief. She didn't want to lie, but she didn't want to tell the truth either. So she typed, then deleted, then just stared. Jared's message sat unread for 6 hours. Not because she didn't see it, but because she couldn't find the courage to open that kind of door. What do you say when the truth feels too heavy to text? She opened the message, typed, "Hey, I'm fine, thanks though," paused, backspaced, typed, "Rough week, appreciate you checking in," paused again, backspaced again. Then she just wrote, "Honestly, things are hard. I'm behind on bills. I've been scared to even talk about it." And she stared at it, thumb hovering over send, heart pounding like it was a confession. Because for her, it was. It's strange how telling the truth can feel more dangerous than being broke. Jasmine wasn't afraid Jared would judge her. She was afraid that by speaking it, her struggle would become more real, more permanent. That somehow admitting the weight would make it heavier. If you've ever typed a truth and held your breath before pressing send, you already know what Jasmine was feeling. He healeth the broken in heart and bindeth up their wounds. Psalm 147:3 KJV. When she finally hit send, she closed her eyes. Not in prayer, but in surrender. Like ripping off a bandage and waiting for the sting. But it didn't sting. Not in the way she expected. Because the wound had already been there, all she'd done was let it breathe. If you've ever wondered what would happen if you just told the truth, stay. Because what Jared replies might be the balm you didn't know you needed. Telling the truth is like opening a window in a room that's been locked too long. The air might sting at first, but eventually you remember how to breathe. You are still worthy. You are still safe. You are still becoming. God, give me the strength to name what I've been hiding and to believe that naming it doesn't make me weak. If that prayer sounded like something you've whispered in the dark, subscribe. Not because you need answers, but because you deserve not to be alone while waiting for them. Because Jared's response will bring more than comfort. It'll offer Jasmine something she didn't expect to hear from anyone, especially not family. Studies show One of the biggest barriers to emotional recovery is the fear of disclosure. But vulnerability isn't weakness, it's the beginning of repair. If you've ever told the truth, even when it shook, you comment, still honest, someone might need to see your courage. And if this whisper gave your truth a place to rest, wait for the next one. Because what Jared says next might just open a door Jasmine didn't know was still locked. She didn't expect a solution, just kindness. But what he offered was more. Jared replied 5 minutes later. No delay, no judgment, no questions. His words blinked on her screen like light. Thanks for telling me. If you need a hand, like with rent or food, just say so. No strings. I've got you. She read it 3 times, then again, then once more, just to make sure it hadn't changed. Because it felt impossible. Not because of the amount, but because of the simplicity, the trust, the grace. She didn't know how to answer. Gratitude tangled with guilt. Why is it so hard to accept help when it's offered freely? Somewhere along the way, she had learned that receiving meant weakness, meant failure, meant owing someone something she might not be able to repay. But Jared didn't ask for anything. He just gave like it was natural, like she was worth it, and that more than the money shook her. If you've ever felt unworthy of being helped, even when love is offered, what comes next might be exactly what your soul has needed to hear. Freely ye have received, freely give. Matthew 10:8 KJV. She remembered her grandmother again. How she'd send food to neighbors, even when their own pantry was thin. Back then, Jasmine didn't understand. Now she felt it, the weight of receiving when your pride tells you not to. But something in her softened, because maybe grace isn't something you earn. Maybe it's something you just don't block. If you're still here, it might be because you've been carrying guilt for needing too much. But stay, because what Jared says next will help Jasmine let go of something far heavier than bills. Receiving is like opening your hands after they've been clenched too long. It aches, but it also reminds you you were never meant to grip pain forever. Letting someone give to you isn't surrendering power. It's making room for connection. You are not a burden. You are not forgotten. You are not beyond grace. God, teach me how to receive without shame. Teach me to believe that help doesn't mean I've failed. If this whisper felt like a breath you didn't know you were holding, subscribe. Not because this fixes everything, but because you deserve a place to rest your questions. Because what Jared sends next isn't just money. It's a reminder of something Jasmine forgot about herself, something that'll change how she walks through the rest of this month. Studies show that those who receive help with open hearts recover emotionally far faster than those who try to endure silently. Maybe healing starts with saying yes. If you've ever struggled to let someone care for you, comment, still learning to receive. Your honesty might help someone drop their guard, and if this whisper gave you permission to soften a little, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next step won't just shift her circumstances, it'll awaken something she hasn't felt in a long time: dignity. Sometimes what reminds you who you are isn't a miracle, it's a memory. An hour later, after Jasmine replied with quiet gratitude, Jared sent another message. No words, just an image. A blurry photo, faded low res, taken 10 years ago. It was the two of them sitting on a curb outside their grandmother's house, ice cream melting in hand, laughing like They had no idea what bills were. She hadn't seen that photo in years, didn't even know it existed, but the moment she saw it, something inside her cracked. Because that girl in the picture hadn't been worried, hadn't been ashamed, hadn't felt like a burden. She was free, unfiltered, loved, and still inside her somewhere, she stared at that photo longer than she expected, zoomed in as if searching for the version of herself she used to believe in. How did she get from there to here? Where did she lose the sense that she was enough even without accomplishments? Even with empty hands, the answer wasn't clear, but the ache told her she wanted it back. Not the ice cream, not the moment, the dignity, the light. If you've ever forgotten what you used to believe about yourself, what's coming next might help you remember why you still matter. Fear, not for I have redeemed thee, I have called thee by thy name, thou art mine. Isaiah 43:1 KJV. That verse didn't come to her in words. It came in a feeling like being called by name when you thought no one remembered it. The photo didn't solve her problems, but it whispered, "You're still you, and you're still worthy." If you're still here, maybe you're trying to remember who you were before shame rewrote your story. Stay. The next moment might help you rewrite it back. Think of self-worth like an old photo. It never truly fades, but sometimes it hides under layers of grief and dust. And sometimes all it takes is someone who remembers to bring it back into the light. You are remembered. You are worth recalling. You are still whole. God. If there's a version of me you still see with delight, show me, remind me, please. If this whisper felt like a photo you didn't know your soul missed, subscribe. Maybe the next whisper will help you frame it again, because Jared is about to say something she's never heard him say before. And it won't just comfort her, it'll start to heal something deeper. Research says nostalgia can regulate stress and anxiety, reminding us we've survived before, and we can again. If you've ever found a part of yourself in an old photo, comment, "Still in there, someone else might need that reminder today." And if this whisper felt like a light under the dust, wait for the next one. Because what Jared shares next won't just be from memory, but from pain he's never shared before. He gave, not out of pity, but because he'd once been there too. Later that evening, Jasmine's phone lit up again. Jared had sent another message, but this time it wasn't just comfort, it was confession. "I never told you this." She sat up. "Years ago, I almost lost my apartment. No one knew. I lived on instant noodles for a month, slept with my shoes on because I was scared someone would knock and take my stuff." There was a pause, a beat of silence between texts. Then another message. "I remember thinking, if anyone found out, they'd think I was useless." She blinked. This wasn't the Jared she knew. The cousin who always looked like he had it together. Confident, put together, unshaken. But here he was, opening a door she never knew he'd locked. It wasn't just money he'd given her. It was dignity. Not because he had extra, but because he knew what it felt like to be drowning and smile anyway. Suddenly, the shame she'd been carrying felt less heavy because someone had once stood in the same storm. If you've ever believed you were alone in your fall, this next part might remind you that even the strongest people have cracked floors. We have not an high priest which cannot be touched with the feeling of our infirmities. Hebrews 4:15. KJV, Jared wasn't Jesus. But in that moment, he mirrored something holy. He didn't fix her pain, he shared his. And in doing so, he offered her more than help. He offered her belonging. If you're still watching, maybe part of you is wondering if your weakness disqualifies you. stay. Because what Jared says next might help you see that being broken doesn't make you less. We all have rooms in our memory we keep locked. Painful moments, quiet collapses. But when someone cracks their door open, first, sometimes it gives you the courage to open yours too. Healing isn't about hiding. It's about realizing you were never the only one. You are not the only one. You are not too late. You are not beyond healing. God, thank you for people who bleed quietly but still choose to reach back and help someone else. If this whisper felt like someone cracking their heart open just to remind you you're not alone, subscribe, because you never know when the next story will sound like yours. Because Jasmine's about to remember a moment from her childhood. She's buried deep, a moment that might explain why receiving help always felt like failure. Psychologists say shame begins to dissolve when shared in safe spaces. Jared made this moment safe. If someone once helped you from a place of shared pain, comment, still grateful. Your gratitude might be someone else's oxygen tonight. And if this whisper felt like a hand reaching back into your silence, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next memory might hold the key to how she's been living for far too long. Some debts aren't financial, some begin in childhood, and they don't send bills, just shame. That night, Jasmine couldn't sleep. Not from stress, from remembering. She was 8, school cafeteria, forgot her lunch again. Her teacher offered her a sandwich from the teacher's lounge. Soft white bread, peanut butter. She smiled politely, took it. But when she turned around, another student whispered, "She's poor." It wasn't cruel, just factual, but it lodged in her ribs like a splinter. Later that day, she heard it again, this time from an aunt talking about her mom. They always need help. She wasn't supposed to hear it, but she did, and it echoed for years. That voice became permanent. Every time someone offered something, money, food, grace, she heard it. They always need help. She started believing that needing meant lacking, that accepting meant exposing, that receiving meant weakness. She never questioned it. Until now. If a voice from your childhood still whispers, "You're not enough," what's coming next might begin to silence it. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. Jeremiah 29:11 KJV. She read that verse on a fridge magnet once. Didn't believe it. But now in the quiet hum of memory, it rang truer than before. Maybe God knew she'd internalized shame long before bills ever piled up. And maybe he'd been writing a new ending long before she could see it. If you've ever heard a voice that said, "You're too needy to be loved," stay. The next whisper might be louder than that memory. Think of your inner child as someone waiting at a locked door. They don't need rescue. They need permission to be held, to be heard, to stop apologizing for being human. You are not what they said. You are not your lack. You are not too much. God, help me stop punishing myself for things I never chose. Heal the girl inside me who still believes she's a burden. If this whisper touched a memory you thought you buried, subscribe, because your healing might be waiting right after the next breath. Because Jasmine is about to do something she never thought she would accept help without apology. And what happens after might surprise her. Therapists say the root of financial anxiety often lies in childhood associations with scarcity and shame. Jasmine just unearthed hers. If you've ever remembered a moment from childhood that shaped your fear of asking, comment still undoing. You're not alone in the untangling, and if this whisper touched a silence you've never voiced, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next step won't just shift her week, it might free something she didn't know was trapped. The first time you say yes without apology, something inside you exhales. She stared at the message thread, Jared's last text still blinking. If you need help, say so. She'd reread it so many times the screen felt memorized. This time she didn't backspace, didn't edit, didn't shrink. She typed, I do. I need help. And I'm trying not to hate myself for saying that. Then she hit send. No shaking hands, no holding her breath, just a quiet stillness, like something that had been clenching for years finally let go. It wasn't about the money anymore. It wasn't even about Jared. It was about saying I need and not ending the sentence with guilt. It was about realizing she wasn't failing. She was allowing someone to see her, allowing grace to touch what shame had hidden, allowing light into the places that had only known pressure. If you've ever held your breath before asking for help, stay. Because what Jasmine receives next isn't just help, it's restoration. Let us therefore come boldly unto the throne of grace, that we may obtain mercy and find grace to help in time of need. Hebrews 4:16 KJV boldly. That word used to sound so foreign, so unearned, but now it felt different. Not loud, not arrogant, just honest, just present. Maybe boldness isn't about volume, maybe it's about not running away from your own need. If you've ever doubted whether your need was valid, stay, because what Jared sends next proves she wasn't just heard, she was honored. Think of need like a lantern. It's only shameful if you try to hide it. But held up it lights the way for someone else to walk toward you. You can need and still be worthy. You can ask and still be strong. You can receive and still be whole. God, thank you for letting need not mean failure. Teach me to ask without shrinking. If this whisper felt like a breath you didn't know you were allowed to take, subscribe, because you deserve to exhale fully. Because Jared's reply is more than supportive, it's prophetic, and it shifts Jasmine's vision of what provision really means. According to recent studies, the act of verbalizing need can reduce cortisol and increase emotional clarity. Jasmine just gave her brain permission to feel safe. If you've ever whispered, I need help, and finally meant it, comment, still learning to ask. Your courage might unlock someone else's, and if this whisper lets you unclench even just a little, wait for the next one. Because what Jared sends next won't just support her, it'll remind Jasmine of a dream she'd given up. Sometimes provision isn't just about paying bills, it's about resurrecting dreams. A few minutes later, Jared replied, just sent something to help with rent. She expected that. Grateful but braced. Then another message came. Also, I know this is random, but remember when you used to write poetry? I still have one of your old pieces, unseen but not unloved. It got me through a bad week once. Her breath caught. You ever think about writing again? Maybe I could help you set up a little blog. No pressure, just you're too gifted to let that sleep forever. Sleep. That word rang in her ribs, because that's exactly what her gift had done. It hadn't died. It had gone quiet. She hadn't written in 5 years, not since her last eviction. Back then, it felt indulgent. Who has time for art when life demands survival? But now, He remembered not just her need, but her light, and in doing so, he handed her back a piece of herself she forgot she lost. If you've ever let go of a dream just to make it through the day, what's coming next might stir something you thought had died quietly. Stir up the gift of God which is in thee. 2 Timothy 1:6 KJV. That verse didn't feel like a command. It felt like permission. Permission to wake up what shame had put to sleep. Permission to write again, not because she'd made it, but because she was still here. If something inside you has been dormant, creativity, hope, belief, stay. Because Jasmine's next whisper might echo your own longing. Your gift isn't gone. It's just buried. Under bills, under self-doubt, under survival, but seeds know how to wait, and light knows how to find them. Your gift is not foolish. Your dream is not expired. Your voice is not too late. God, thank you for the people who remember what we've forgotten. Help me believe my gift still matters. If this whisper felt like someone reminding you of who you used to be, subscribe. Because what's next might help you become her again. Because Jasmine's about to take the tiniest step writing one new line, and that act alone might shift her entire week. Studies from Harvard found that reconnecting with past passions reduces depression symptoms by over 30%. Jared just did that without knowing. If someone ever reminded you of a gift you nearly buried, comment, still here, still gifted. You might remind someone else to dig up theirs. And if this whisper felt like sunlight reaching something old in you, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next line won't just be poetry, it'll be proof she's still alive. She didn't write a masterpiece, just one line, but it felt like breathing again. She found her old notebook, buried in a box marked misc. The pages smelled like time, crinkled at the corners, faint pencil marks barely visible. She sat on the edge of her bed, lights off, phone face down, just her and the page. She didn't know what to say, but her hand moved anyway, and the line came quietly. I am still here, and I still feel. No rhyme, no rhythm, just truth. And for the first time in years, she didn't hear the voice that used to whisper, "Who do you think you are?" and said silence. Sacred silence. It wasn't about poetry. It wasn't even about talent. It was about reclaiming space inside herself that shame had boarded up. It was about proving not to the world, but to her own breath that she hadn't disappeared. Just paused. And maybe now she was pressing play again. If you've ever silenced your own voice because life got too loud, this next part might be what you need to start speaking again. He restoreth my soul. He leadeth me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. Psalm 23:3 KJV. She always thought restoration meant getting things back, money, stability, peace. But maybe sometimes God restores you by reintroducing you to the person you were never meant to lose. If a part of you still waits to be acknowledged, stay, because Jasmine is about to read what she just wrote out loud, and her own voice might surprise her. Think of your heart like an attic, dusty, cluttered, but filled with pieces of who you once were. And sometimes healing is just lighting a match in the dark corner you forgot held wonder. You still have something to say. You still carry light. You still deserve to be heard. God, thank you for not letting me lose the softest parts of me. Let me speak again with gentleness. If this whisper felt like a hand opening a forgotten drawer inside your soul, subscribe. Your next word might be waiting just ahead. Because when Jasmine reads her words aloud, something unexpected happens. Not outside, but inside. And it shifts everything. Neuroscience says writing down feelings activates the brain's self-soothing centers. Jasmine just wrote herself into calm. If you've ever written one line that helped you breathe again, comment, still writing. Your line might give someone else their breath back. And if this whisper felt like a return to something you didn't know you missed, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next whisper isn't on paper, it's spoken. And it wakes something she thought was gone for good. She whispered one sentence and it echoed louder than her fears ever did. She looked at the page. Her handwriting was uneven, trembling like it hadn't been asked to speak in years. She hadn't read aloud in forever, but something inside her wanted to be heard. She whispered, "I am still here, and I still feel." No applause, no music, just silence. Sacred, soft, and completely hers. And for the first time, her own voice didn't sound like an intruder. She used to flinch at the sound of herself. Recordings, mirrors, even voicemails. Because the voice in her head never sounded kind. But now, hearing herself speak words she truly meant that felt like coming home. She didn't just hear herself, she accepted herself. If you've ever feared your own voice, stay. Because what Jasmine feels next might be exactly what your soul has longed for. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Proverbs 18:21, KV. She didn't think her voice carried power. But maybe it wasn't about volume. Maybe it was about truth. And when spoken truth changes the air, shifts the room, wakes the spirit, if no one ever told you your voice matters, stay. Because what Jasmine does next could awaken something you've kept quiet for too long. Imagine your voice like a lighthouse. Even if no ship sees it, it still shines, still warns, still stands. You don't need applause to validate your light. Your voice carries value. Your truth holds space. Your breath belongs. God, thank you for not letting silence swallow me whole. Give me courage to speak softly and still be heard. If this whisper felt like your own voice getting permission to return, subscribe. You don't have to vanish to be valuable, because Jasmine's voice isn't done yet. She's about to send something to someone she never thought she'd reach out to. Research shows that hearing your own voice express vulnerability activates the brain's empathy centers, not just for others, but for yourself. Jasmine just became her own witness. If you've ever spoken your truth after a long silence, comment. Still finding my voice. Your whisper might become someone else's echo. And if this whisper felt like standing in your own light again, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's next message won't be for herself, but for someone she never expected to heal with. She didn't write to fix things. She wrote to free herself. And sometimes that's enough. It wasn't long, just a few sentences. But her fingers trembled more than when she had asked for help. Mom, I know you did what you could. I used to carry anger, but I don't want to anymore. I'm learning to receive, and I hope one day we can talk again. She stared at the blinking cursor. One breath in and sent. No reply yet, but that wasn't the point. The sending itself was sacred. She used to think forgiveness required reconciliation, but maybe forgiveness is more like letting go of the weight you were never meant to carry. Maybe it's choosing to stop drinking the poison and expecting them to feel it. She wasn't erasing the past, just refusing to relive it every day. If you've ever held on to hurt because it felt safer than healing, stay. because Jasmine's release might lead you to your own. And be ye kind one to another, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, even as God for Christ's sake hath forgiven you. Ephesians 4:32, KJV. She used to read that verse with resentment. It felt like pressure, an impossible ask, but now it felt like an invitation, not to pretend, but to loosen, because tight fists can't receive. If forgiveness ever felt like betrayal of your own pain, stay, because what Jasmine feels next isn't guilt, it's peace. Imagine your memory like a room you walk through daily. You can't change the furniture, but you can choose whether to sit in the pain or open a window and let light in. You can let go without forgetting. You can release without returning. You can forgive without becoming small. God, teach me how to loosen what my soul can't carry anymore. Even if they never say sorry, make peace my portion. If this whisper felt like a key you didn't know you still held, subscribe. Because freedom might just start with a sentence, because Jasmine's story is almost full circle. But one more moment is still waiting, and it might be the most tender one yet. Studies show writing a forgiveness letter, even if unsent, lowers blood pressure and increases emotional clarity by 23%. She didn't need a reply. She needed release. If you've ever written something just to breathe again, comment, still releasing. Your words might open someone else's window. And if this whisper felt like light peeking through a long closed door, wait for the next one. Because Jasmine's final moment won't be about debt or fear or shame, but about grace and how she chooses to carry it forward. She didn't get rich. She didn't get famous. She got peace, and that was more than enough. Sunlight spilled across her kitchen floor. Bills still sat in their envelopes, but they weren't monsters anymore, just paper. The difference, her heart had unclenched. She didn't flinch when the phone rang, didn't panic at the ding of an email. Something had shifted, not outside, but inside, and that shift was sacred. She still had questions, still needed a plan, still had rent to meet, but she also had peace. And peace isn't the absence of pressure, it's the presence of perspective. If peace has ever felt too expensive to afford, maybe this moment will prove otherwise. The Lord will perfect that which concerneth me. Psalm 138, 8 KJV. She didn't need every answer. She just needed the assurance that someone cared about every piece of her story. And somehow that verse made her feel like none of it was wasted. If you've ever wondered whether your story still matters, this next breath might remind you that it does. Imagine your life as a river. It doesn't stop for rocks, it flows around them. Still moving, still going. That's you now. I don't have to rush. I don't have to prove. I don't have to carry it all alone. God, thank you for walking me through this whisper. Help me walk into tomorrow with grace, not fear. If this journey felt like a mirror to parts of you you forgot how to hold, subscribe, because there's more where this came from. And if this felt like the first real breath you've taken in weeks, what comes next is even gentler. Because in the next whisper, we'll talk about rest. Not sleep, but true soul rest. Studies show the act of being heard, even through storytelling, lowers emotional isolation by up to 27%. You weren't just listening, you were healing. If you saw any part of your story in Jasmine's, comment still unfolding. Your words might make someone else stay a little longer. And if this whisper brought even one quiet moment of peace to your soul, wait until you hear the next one. Because the weight you've been carrying was never meant to be yours alone.